Well, 36 years in Sacramento, you think it couldn't get any worse.
And here we are.
Check it out.
What's up, Kings fans? Welcome to episode 17 of the Royal Report with Calvin and Barry, a Sacramento Kings-based sports talk show. Rough news this week. After 36 years in Sacramento, the Kings have set a new low. That's right, 2 separate 9-game losing streaks this season. That is the first time since the franchise moved to Sacramento back in 1985. So 36 years. Wow, that is incredible. On a good note, there are only 16 games remaining in this NBA season for the Sacramento Kings, and 7 of those games are against teams that are under 500. So we do have a shot in the next couple weeks before the end of the season. Hopefully us real Kings fans can enjoy a taste of victory or maybe a couple times before the end of the year. I just want to do a quick shout out to all my Sacramento Kings fans out there. Thanks for watching the show. Thanks for supporting us. We're happy to have you guys. And Calvin, let's jump right in.
That's right. Thanks as always for watching. Please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel down below if you enjoy the show. Welcome in to episode 17. On today's show, should the Kings consider resting De'Aaron Fox? Do they have any remorse for not trading Harrison Barnes? And when will Marvin Bagley make his return? But we begin with some highlights from around the league.
Other good news for us Sacramento Kings fans, the Golden One Center will be welcoming back fans this week, April 20th, against the Minnesota Timberwolves. Mark that date on your calendar. 2 somber events to, make note of this week. LaMarcus Aldridge has announced his retirement shortly after joining the Brooklyn Nets. I know LaMarcus was dealing with a heart issue early on in his career, and it seems to finally taken its toll, and he's decided to hang up the sneakers. So thank you, LaMarcus. Wonderful career, 15 seasons, 19 points per game. I loved watching you in Portland. Wish you would have stayed, but I know how it goes. Another kind of somber moment to note for Sacramento Kings fans, or I guess for NBA fans in general, Jamal Murray is out with a torn ACL. Very devastating blow to the Denver Nuggets. I know many people had them chosen to win the NBA title this year. Jokic to win MVP award. It looked like they were finally ready to break through that barrier. So this is a huge blow for them.
Yeah, definitely. Very sad news on both accounts. Shout out to both Jamal Murray, a speedy recovery. We wish him nothing but the best, and we wish nothing but the best to LaMarcus Aldridge in his life after basketball. Now to some players who were putting up big numbers on the court as of late, and maybe nobody is putting up bigger numbers than Steph Curry. The chef is cooking once again. He dropped 53 points on Monday night against the Nuggets and had a 10 for 18 3-point shooting performance. Not to be outdone, he showed up 2 days later against Oklahoma City and dropped 42 on 11 for 16 shooting from 3. Steph now has 19 career games in which he has made 10 or more 3-point field goals. There is no other player in NBA history who has more than 5. And oh yeah, that person is Klay Thompson, his teammate. It's just amazing the types of performances that Steph is able to generate night in and night out. Definitely missed him on the court last year, and I'm really glad to see that he is back and better than ever, it seems, in this season for the Warriors. Another player who has made a huge leap this year and has his team right out in front in the Eastern Conference is Joel Embiid. Joel has had a really dominant season for the 76ers, and the question is he getting enough recognition for the year that he's having? Many sporting news references don't even consider Joel Embiid a top 5 MVP candidate right now. However, he does have, like I mentioned, the 76ers in first place in the Eastern Conference, and the numbers he's putting up this year are mind-boggling. He is averaging 30 points a game, 11 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, 1.5 blocks, while shooting 51% from the field and 39% from 3. That's for a 7-footer who can really move. Barry, he's really impressed me. I've been on Philly's bandwagon all year long ever since draft night, and I really think Joel should be getting a little bit more recognition for the year he's having.
Yeah, it is a truly incredible year for him, and don't forget he's also shooting 85% from free throw line. So that is especially important for a big man and somebody that bangs around inside, is to capitalize on those extra points. I also wanted to mention Steph Curry, with that performance against the Nuggets on Monday, did pass Wilt Chamberlain for the all-time Warriors scoring record. He is on another hot streak. He is 8 games straight, 30-point games. That is the longest record or streak of his career. He's also lighting it up this month. In 7 games this month, he's averaging 39 points per game. He said he's gunning for Klay Thompson's 3-point record that was taken from him. Fun basketball to watch, Calvin. I know I saw an interview after the game. Steve Kerr is saying that he is impressed every single night watching these guys light it up from all over the court. It is truly incredible, and it's amazing to look at the difference 10 years has made on this league. We're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll jump right into your Sacramento Kings Weekcap.
One of those guys there, he's going to be hooping till he dies. He's just a hooper. Get up, young fella, get up!
Welcome back. It was another tough week for the Sacramento Kings, who continued to pile up the losses. As we mentioned at the top of the show, they are now riding their second 9-game losing streak of the season. They were in a couple of these games, but a bunch of tough losses throughout the week. They played well enough through about 3 quarters to beat the number 1 team in the NBA, the Utah Jazz, but fell apart late. Much of the same happened last night against the Phoenix Suns. I really think that the loss to Utah was extremely demoralizing and affected them right from the beginning of the game against New Orleans. They came out real flat and fell behind big real early on in the game. It's obviously getting more and more frustrating every time the Kings take the court as the losses continue to pile up. The Washington game was a statistical anomaly. The Kings had a season-high 17 steals to go along with 8 blocks. They forced 26 Washington turnovers and held them to 29% from beyond the arc, yet they gave up 123 points and lost the game by 12. For me, it just continues to be a matter of not giving enough effort on the defensive end. My frustration with this is at an all-time high. Just last night before the Kings took the floor against the Suns, I was watching the pregame show, and on the telecast, the discussion was about how De'Aaron Fox is continuing to have this great season, but the Kings are not living up to it by getting enough wins. The Kings are 7-9 now in games when De'Aaron scores at least 30 or more points. And the question posed on the telecast was, who needs to step up and provide De'Aaron with more help offensively in order for the Kings to get more wins? Scoring has not been an issue for Sacramento all year long. They've been in the top 10 in points per game in the league from the very beginning of the season, and they're 1 point per game away from being number 4 in the league. De'Aaron Fox does not need more help scoring. He's getting plenty of help. Harrison Barnes has scored well in spurts. Richaun Holmes is averaging a career high in points per game. Buddy Hield has been inconsistent, but he is always capable of scoring 20. What the Kings need is defense. And Barry, I was flabbergasted that nobody brought up that fact on the show, on the telecast before the game yesterday. It seems that this is just continuing to be an overlooked thing in Sacramento.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head there, and you and I have been talking about it for weeks. The Kings give up too many points per game. They were on a streak earlier this season, over 120 points per game. They gave up 122 last night to the Phoenix Suns. They just simply cannot play defense. 4 more games this past week, just like last week, 4 more losses. We did see some competitive basketball, a few really competitive quarters for the Sacramento Kings, but ultimately it ended up in losses in all 4 games. You mentioned the Utah Jazz game. The Sacramento Kings were actually very well in that game until there was an altercation between Joe Ingles and some of the Kings players that propelled the Jazz to a victory over Sacramento. That Pelicans game was really tough one to watch. 64 points between Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson. They absolutely annihilated the Kings. One thing I did want to mention for loyal Sacramento Kings fans out there, we did get to see 4 minutes of Isaiah Thomas action for the Pelicans. He scored 2 points in those 4 minutes. Unfortunately, they are not going to be renewing his 10-day contract, so he will be a free agent probably for the rest of the season. But you never know. The Washington Wizards game, another rough game, losing to one of the worst teams in the league. And then last night against Phoenix, Phoenix has the second best record in the NBA. The Kings outshot them, and they played decent. They just didn't play defense. And, they have another guy called Chris Paul that seems to do all those little things to make a team win. You could outshoot them, you can outplay the other team, but somehow they're going to come up with the victory due to those Chris Paul point God things. So another tough week of basketball. I know we had talked about the Kings needing some help, De'Aaron Fox needing some help. He played wonderful this past week. He almost scored 30 points in all the games, so he had 43 in one. Buddy Hield showed up last night with 24 points. But there might be some help arriving soon in the form of a number 2 pick out of Duke. We're going to talk about that when we come right back.
First double-figure game since 3 straight in late March. Haliburton baseline pull-up, got it.
A little bit of good news for the Sacramento Kings this week. Former number 2 overall pick Marvin Bagley has rejoined the team and will continue to travel with the team for the rest of the season. We did see him on the sidelines in a suit for the Phoenix game. I know Coach Walton has been on record saying he is not close to a return. However, he is with the team. We saw him with a brace on his hand. He is traveling. I know he's making progress. Calvin, when can we expect to see Marvin back on the court?
Well, hopefully sooner rather than later. The Kings could really use his help, especially with the latest injury to Richaun Holmes, which we're going to talk about next. But they are down a big man now. The question is where do the rotations fit in between the players that are remaining here? Whiteside, Damian Jones, and even Chimezie Metu. So the Kings could obviously use a big body like Marvin's back in the lineup as soon as possible. I think it would be excellent for Marvin himself to get back out on the court as well. It would be really beneficial for him to end the year on a high note. When he's been out there, he has had his moments where he's played very, very well. But obviously this is yet another setback, and I think it's crucial for him going into the offseason to be on the court and see the ball go through the net a few times. So that's what he has, moving forward into next season.
You and I had talked about the potential fit between Richaun Holmes and Marvin Bagley, and maybe moving Marvin to that 5 spot. It would be a great time for him to come back and get some time at the 5 while Richaun's out. I don't know how long Richaun's going to be missing, but Marvin, if you can hear me, we need you back. We need you back, buddy. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll jump right into the Richaun Holmes hamstring injury.
Well, they had that huge third quarter against Portland. In fact, a 40-19 run to really put that game away. Right now, a bit of a struggle to start on this home floor. Sacramento looks very comfortable, and now...
Welcome back. The Sacramento Kings lost yet another big man to their rotation as Richaun Holmes went out of the game just 16 minutes in against the New Orleans Pelicans with a strained right hamstring. After an MRI confirmed that injury, the Kings have announced that he will miss at least 3 games. Hopefully not more than that, because the Kings could really use either him or Marvin Bagley back in the lineup. Barry, the question is, who is the guy that's going to step up with both Bagley and Holmes out? Coach Walton went with the decision to start Damian Jones last night against the Phoenix Suns. Jones really did not play that well or that much in the game, for that matter. He seemed to be very lost on the defensive end. Hassan Whiteside gave him good minutes, but Hassan Whiteside is not a full-time starter type player in this league, at least in my opinion. Chimezie Metu, to me, seems like the obvious choice to then be the starter. He's an energy type guy, a little bit younger than Whiteside, a little bit more athletic, although he doesn't have the size. The Kings can play that smaller type ball lineup, get up and down the court, which is the thing that they do the best, and then Whiteside can continue his role off the bench in relief minutes.
Yeah, you know what? I think Damian Jones had a bad game last night, but this week I think he had 12 or 14 in a game. He's been productive in limited minutes. And what I've seen out of Metu, I've really liked as well. He had an awesome block in the last game, caught the ball midair, he's had some great dunks. He seems to have some good chemistry with Tyrese Haliburton and a couple of the other young guys. But ultimately, this is going to be a committee job. All the bigs are going to have to work together to fill in this position. And unfortunately, I don't really see them being able to fill that void or that role. You look at the Sacramento Kings record with Richaun Holmes this season. They were 22-28. And with Richaun on the bench, they are 0-6. Unfortunately, I think that streak will continue and we will see more losses pile up for the Sacramento Kings.
Yeah, certainly without both of them, the Kings have their hands tied behind their back, without a doubt. We're going to take another break. We'll be right back.
To the astonishment of many Kings fans and the delight to many others, Harrison Barnes was retained by the Sacramento Kings past the trade deadline this season. Calvin, the question is, did the Kings miss an opportunity to sell high on HB?
Well, that's really hard to know without actually knowing what the exact offers were on the table for Harrison, because without knowing what all those offers were, you can't really make a clear-cut statement as it would have been better to trade him or it would have been better to keep him. Certainly at the time of the deadline, I thought it made much more sense to keep Harrison Barnes. I didn't expect the Kings to go on another 9-game losing streak after the trade deadline. You figured that they were going to make a collective push towards the playoffs. Harrison Barnes having a career year himself. And then you look at, what would they have gotten for him in return? The Celtics were the team that was mentioned the most in being one that wanted to acquire Harrison. They ended up getting Evan Fournier, a very similar type player. What did they give up? 2 second-round picks and Jeff Teague. I don't think any Kings fan would have been happy or accepted that as a return deal for Harrison Barnes. So the question is really, what was the market out there? And I'm not sure if Harrison Barnes' contract may have affected his ability to be traded as well. He's making $22 million this year and he's set to make another $20 million next year. He is a productive player, but the question is, do you want a guy making that much money who's a second or maybe third option even on your team?
Yeah, I'm really mixed on this. I wasn't ready for the Kings to give up on the season at the trade deadline. And as you mentioned, what were the Kings actually going to get for Harrison Barnes? Hindsight's always 20/20, but you look over this past 9-game losing streak, although Harrison's been on the court and he's been productive, if they didn't have him, are they going to do any worse than losing 9 in a row? No, they're not. Could they have potentially done better? Maybe, depending on what they were able to pick up, but most likely they'd probably be in the same exact position they're in now. I don't think Harrison Barnes has lost much of trade value, if he even had any. So I think they still have an opportunity to move him at the end of the season if they choose to. But I think the Kings made the right move here in holding on to him, developing this culture, keeping this core together. I think teams move on too fast sometimes from players. And I think it's tough being a younger player on a young team, seeing your leader or your mentor getting traded. We saw that years ago with Shumpert, and the team just kind of fell apart afterwards. So I'm happy they held on to him through the rest of this year. Not sure what they're going to do in the offseason, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there, I guess.
Yeah, it's exactly like you said. Hindsight is 20/20. If you knew the Kings were going to do nothing but lose after the trade deadline, then a lot of people would have said, "Yeah, of course, trade them all. Let's improve our draft position and whatnot." But no, that you play to win the game, as Coach Edwards says. And keeping Harrison Barnes on the team was playing to win the game. So I think the Kings absolutely made the right decision.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to dive into our top 3 needs this offseason for the Sacramento Kings.
Welcome back. There's just about 4 weeks to go in the 2020 regular season, and the question remains, where do the Sacramento Kings go from here as they head into the off season? Barry, it's time for you and I to put together our wish list. This is going to be our top 3 areas of need for the Sacramento Kings this summer. What you got?
So my number one need or priority for the Sacramento Kings this offseason is to re-sign Richaun Holmes. I think that's got to be number one priority for them. He is obviously a very valuable piece on this team. As I mentioned, 0-6 this year with him on the bench. So that's my number one need. Number 2 need is going to be drafting well. I think the biggest difference between the Sacramento Kings and a lot of other teams in the similar position over the last 10 years is those teams have drafted well. And that's kind of brought them out of the lottery versus you look at the Sacramento Kings, they've hit on maybe one draft pick every 5 years. And that's why they have been stuck in, Losersville. So my second priority is draft well. And then my third priority is going to be bring in some more veterans. There are a few guys that are free agents that I really liked. Obviously, we've talked about defense all year long. So I'd love to bring some defensive-oriented players in. I know PJ Tucker's the top of my list as far as a big man that can come in, take some pressure off guys like Marvin Bagley and Richaun Holmes. And then also a guy that we mentioned before in Victor Oladipo. I know you and I, Calvin, had both talked about trading for him, but he's a free agent at the end of the season. You don't even need to give up any assets for him potentially. So I would look out for guys like that. And then I'm going to give you 2 more of my needs. Not immediate needs, but 2 more things that the Kings should be thinking about this offseason. I think that's going to be Marvin Bagley. He's going to be on the last year of his rookie deal, $11 million, and then he's going to be restricted free agent next offseason. So what are you going to do with Marvin? That really needs to be answered. And then as you mentioned in the last subject, cap space. We have Buddy Hield and Harrison Barnes combining to make $42 million next season. I'm not sure if you're getting $42 million in value out of those 2 players. Calvin, what do you think?
Well, my list is going to be fairly similar to yours. I agree with all those points that you made. The draft is a big thing for me. It's not in my top 3, but the draft is always important, especially when you're a lottery pick. You need to draft well, always. My number 1 priority for the Kings this offseason is the exact same as yours. It's re-sign Richaun Holmes. Career high this year in points, rebounds, assists, and blocks. He has really come into his own. I think he really has found a home in Sacramento. He plays well with De'Aaron Fox. He brings energy and he plays defense. That's two things that the Kings need night in and night out. He is very, very important to them. As you mentioned, they haven't won a game without him this year. So that's definitely my number one priority. Number two is going to be to trade Buddy Hield. I definitely think that Buddy Hield is the weak link of this team. He's too inconsistent. He has those great games where he's 5 of 8, 5 of 9, even 6 for 12 from 3, and everybody loves that. But it's the days that he doesn't hit those threes. He's never out there being a solid defender. I think that the Kings would save themselves a lot of trouble in the future if they were to move on from him, try to bring back some assets, whether it's draft picks or another two-way player that can help out and contribute. And then my third priority is, again, similar to yours, it's be aggressive in free agency. I think the Kings really need to try to break the mold of this small market team that can't find any big winners out in free agency. It would definitely help if their draft pick is a slower type player that needs a couple more years to develop. They need somebody who can contribute right away, and I would definitely be looking at a combo guard, a two-way player that's going to be either your starting shooting guard or somebody that's going to play big minutes off the bench. Victor Oladipo, as you mentioned, would be somebody I would absolutely target. DeMar DeRozan is another name that I would definitely go after. Even if you strike out on guys like that and go after a person like Garrett Temple, who is an ex-King, great two-way player, can really shoot from 3, veteran leadership, and plays great defense. Those are the types of players that I would be putting a lot of effort into signing, as the Kings are expected to have a decent amount of money in this offseason in cap space. So those are my top 3 priorities for Sacramento.
If you have a list of priorities this offseason for the Sacramento Kings, go ahead and leave them down in the comments. We'd love to hear from you guys, and you know, we'd love to hear Kings fans and their perspectives. We're going to take a quick break.
It's sitting there and the guy trips on it. Just because my feet happen to be bigger than his, I mean, boy, tough finish there.
Well, the talk around the NBA the last few seasons has been about load management, specifically around players and teams that are actually doing well. But, you know, you look at a team like the Sacramento Kings, obviously in a downward spiral, looking to be out of the playoff push and not even close to that play-in tournament. Would you look to rest a player like De'Aaron Fox for next season? Maybe prevent an injury, maybe, you know, add some more losses if that's what you're looking to do. But Calvin, you know, what's your take on this?
Well, this is an interesting debate to have, because you really can make a pretty good argument for sitting a guy like De'Aaron Fox at this point in the year for a team like Sacramento. First of all, he has played a ton of minutes this year. Yes, he is young, I totally get that. But they played late into the season last year. They didn't get the usual full off season before this year began. It's very probable that De'Aaron Fox could play this summer for Team USA over in Japan, which is going to create an even shorter off season for him going into next year. And to be frank, the Kings are pretty much out of consideration for the postseason at this point. And of course, this is a relevant topic right now because of what just happened with Jamal Murray, right? He goes down, torn ACL in April, mid-April, which means he probably won't be able to play until next year's playoffs for Denver. And that's if he makes a pretty steady recovery. Now, of course, you don't ever want to play for an injury or plan for an injury. But you can totally make the case that De'Aaron Fox should sit out, at least, you know, not play back-to-backs or things like that for the rest of the season. That being said, I'm going to take the player's mentality on this one. If I was in De'Aaron Fox's position, there is no way I would be sitting out any games. I would play through the rest of the season. As the leader of this team, I feel like he owes it to his teammates and to the fans, just like any star player does in this league. So while I think you can make a pretty serious argument for it, I definitely don't think De'Aaron A, wants to, or B, will sit out any of these games.
Yeah, and we had talked about, the relationship between De'Aaron Fox and Luke Walton. Obviously, the more games that the Kings lose, Walton is less likely to return next season. And you also look at their relationship. Is De'Aaron Fox going to continue to respect Luke Walton if Luke Walton chooses to sit him for the rest of the season? Even if it is ultimately not Luke's decision, he's going to be the one in charge of that. So tough decisions to make for the Sacramento Kings. We're going to take a quick break, and we will jump right into Cowbell questions when we come back.
Welcome back. It is time to ring the bell. Cowbell questions. Here we go. Thank you so much for your questions out there. As you know, the drill, if you got a question for us, please write it in the comment section below. Hashtag it with Cowbell questions, and Barry and I will do our very best to answer it on a future episode of the show. Without further ado, let's get our first question from the announcer.
Better dunk, Terrence Davis or Mo Harkless?
Both of these plays were fantastic dunks, extremely athletic moves by both players. I'm going to take the Mo Harkless dunk. No disrespect to Terrence Davis whatsoever, but Terrence Davis, that is, straight elevated and got higher than the defender with his fantastic leaping ability and threw it down. Mo Harkless had to actually adjust his dunk in midair and stretch out over the arm of the defender to actually put the ball through the hoop. So I'm going to take Mo Harkless in this case.
Yeah, two awesome dunks, two great plays to watch this week, both exciting. But I'm going to have to disagree with you, Calvin. I think I'm going to go Terrence Davis. Watching that dunk in real time, I jumped out of my seat. I was excited. It was amazing. So Terrence Davis, awesome play. Next question.
Better point guard, Jason Williams or Mike Bibby?
Another tough one. It's like picking straws here between these two guys. Two of the most exciting players to watch in Sacramento Kings history, without a doubt. Jason Williams, such a great player. I feel bad for him because he was part of the build-up to success for the Sacramento Kings, and he was then traded for Mike Bibby, who got to ride out the actual wave of success that Jason Williams never got to be a part of. In terms of who's the better player, they're slightly different types of point guards. Mike Bibby is much more the score-first point guard than Jason Williams is. Jason Williams more of the set your teammates up. We all know how terrific of a passer he is. Mike Bibby, for me, is the better player overall. Better scorer, better shooter, can still handle the ball and run the offense, and he was much more successful in his career than Jason Williams.
Yeah, tough question. Two of my favorite Kings point guards. Unfortunately, they were never on the same team as they were traded for each other. But two wonderful long careers, 12 and 14 years respectively. Both of them had large impacts on the NBA. I really loved watching Jason Williams. I feel like he was one of the guys that helped create the culture in Sacramento to help them start winning games. Mike Bibby came in and was winning right away. I did have a Mike Bibby jersey. I did have a Jason Williams jersey. I enjoyed watching both of them. Mike Bibby pretty much dominates in all career statistical categories except for assists per game and free throw percentage. But Jason Williams does have that championship ring. He did win one with the 2006 Miami Heat. I'm going to go with a tie here, Calvin.
I don't know if a tie is allowed, but in this case, I think we'll let it slide. It's because it's two Kings greats. I think we both can agree that Jason Williams had by far the better nickname. White Chocolate is forever one of the greatest NBA nicknames. But we move on. Next question.
Better hair, Marvin Bagley or Richaun Holmes?
All right, finally we got an easy question here. I got to go with Richaun Holmes. I'm a big fan of the dreads. I love it. Reminds me of Kenneth Faried back when his heyday with the Denver Nuggets, the Manimal. Something about the dreads on basketball players, I don't know what it is. It makes them look like they're faster. It makes them look like they're all over the court. It's intimidating. I love it. Richaun Holmes, much better hairstyle.
Oh, intimidating. Talk about intimidating. You need a big fro like Marvin Bagley's. I'm definitely going MB35 here. I love the fro. It reminds me of the ABA and a much looser style of basketball. Plus, if he had it all braided up like Richaun's was, he probably wouldn't be able to think of his rhymes as well. So it makes him a better rapper. I'm taking Marvin here. I love the fro. Let it go, Marvin. Let it go.
I mean, if you're talking about, dreads affecting rapping ability, could you imagine Weezy with a fro?
Yeah, you make a good point there. But yeah, I'm still taking Marvin's hair. I think it looks cool. That's all the time we got. I'm ringing the bell. Thank you very much for your submissions this week. When we come back, Barry and I are wrapping up another episode of the Royal Report.
Fox showing off the speed right there. Takes it right to the cup.
All right, we got another fun week of basketball coming up. Sacramento Kings basketball. 3 games this week. 1 game against the Dallas Mavericks and Kings favorite Luka Doncic. And then 2 games against the struggling Minnesota Timberwolves, who did hand the Sacramento Kings a loss last week or a week ago with the return of D'Angelo Russell and upcoming number 1 overall pick Anthony Edwards. Calvin, what game are you most excited about watching this week?
Well, the answer is easy this week because the Sacramento Kings faithful will be back in attendance April 20th against the Minnesota Timberwolves. I'm really looking forward just to seeing Kings fans back in Golden One Center. I really hope that it gives the Kings a big lift emotionally and they're able to come out and get a victory. The Dallas game should be very interesting as well. I always love watching Luka Doncic play, even though it might be a little bit difficult to watch him play against the Sacramento Kings this week. But they've got a real opportunity here. It's a back-to-back at Golden One when they take on the Timberwolves, and fans will be in attendance. So I really think that the Kings should get a much-needed boost in spirits this week after a 9-game losing streak.
I want to thank you all for watching another episode of the Royal Report. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. We'll catch you all next Friday. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and go Kings.
Go Kings.
Thanks, guys.